Welcome to the G5 Hive and our next installment of our Worker Bee series, where we deep dive into the G5 college football landscape with the folks that know the teams the best. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review. Today we'll be taking a look at the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns, who finished 6-7 last season and appeared in the New Orleans Bowl. They wrapped up their 2024 spring practice with their spring game on April 20th. We have a special guest joining us today. He's an honorary Cajun. He's always locked on the Sunbelt. In fact, he is the host of the Locked On Sunbelt podcast. He is David Schultz. David can be found at SchultzyCast on X. Welcome to the show, David.
Gentlemen, good evening. Thanks very much for having me. I'm not sure if I know the most about the Ragin Cajuns, but we'll go with that for now.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you into sports radio and covering the Cajuns?
So, to begin with, I wanted to be a baseball announcer. I spent over a decade in the minor leagues. I did a few Major League Baseball games. So long ago, the team doesn't exist. It was the Expos against the Phillies for a few series. And then I got into hospitality. I was actually working at a ritzy club in North Key Largo, and they kept on bringing in these motivational speakers saying, you know, you got to go do what you want to do. And so I tried my hat at talk radio, and I ended up getting a job in Lafayette. And I came in the middle in 2013. I came in the middle of this bowl run where they were winning 9 games for 4 straight years, won the New Orleans Bowl 4 straight years. They hadn't been to the basketball tournament in about a decade, so I saw that. The college softball team went to the World Series. The baseball team was the number 1 team in the land. I thought I was having a pretty good Schultz effect, and it's been a pretty good run over the last decade or so for the Ragin Cajuns. So, I've had a lot of fun covering it. The thing about the G5, you guys know this, you get the access, right? You know, the coaches will tell you things, not necessarily you can share, but kind of you get the idea of where they're coming from. And they appreciate, you know, when you're there, and when you're not, they bring it up because they only know there's only 2 or 3 people covering it if they're lucky, and sometimes not even that. So I like covering the Cajuns. I know the podcast is sort of slanted that way because that's what I know best, them in South Alabama being in Mobile. But it'll be really interesting. This is going to be a really interesting football season for the Cajuns. That's for sure.
Well, let's get to the position where it all starts on offense, and that is quarterback. Zeon Christ leaves for Houston, and that leaves Chandler Fields and Ben Wooldridge left in that quarterback room, both of which saw playing time last year. They also brought in Adrian Lara from Kansas State. How did the quarterback battle shape up during the spring?
Well, it shaped up for mostly Chandler Fields. Ben Wooldridge still recuperating from a broken foot, which he needed surgery on. So he really couldn't do anything in terms of, practicing. He would do drills, but never just individual drills. So we don't know how that's the case, right? Chandler Fields ends up coming back. Chandler Fields had quite the offseason. He graduated, got engaged, and with Zeon leaving, I think he made the wise decision to come back because, Ben hasn't proven to be healthy yet in a couple of seasons. So Chandler is there. He's not the biggest of all cats. He's a little guy. He's mobile, and he's pretty good at what he does. The quarterback that I think we have to look out for is Samari Collier. He has the athleticism and the arm. He played in that spring ball game, and he could be that Zeon Christ one that you're thinking, well, maybe this is the guy, even though we have Fields who's been experienced, Wooldridge is experienced. The ceiling may be higher with Samari Collier. He went to Illinois, but he went to junior college, and that's where he came from last season. But I would presume, I would phrase that. I wouldn't presume. We'll see what happens come the fall. When I always ask that question, when these coaches like to have the decision made, and they always come back with the cliche answer, well, the players make the decision. Well, baloney. they make the decision. I presume we won't have one heading into fall ball because there's at least Chandler Fields and Ben Wooldridge. We'll find out about Collier, moving forward. So it'll be an interesting season. The thing is, Mike Desimo, along with other guys in the Sun Belt, like, this is the year. We got to. I have to get this done. They lost a couple of games last year that they probably should have won. And he's coached. He's been the coach for 2 seasons, and yet he's coached in 3 bowl games. So it's not like we've fallen off the cliff here. But he has not competed for a Sun Belt championship. And though Billy Napier only won one, he kept on competing for it. And, that's what's expected for the Cajuns.
Moving on to the running game, Louisiana lost its leading rusher from a year ago in Jacob Cabody. They do look to have a deep running back room with the likes of Dre'lyn Washington and Zylan Perry, Bill Davis, among others coming back. How did that room shape up in the spring?
Well, that's the room. It is that's the room. The strength of the Cajuns is going to be the defensive line, the offensive line, and the running backs. I wish I had the stat. I got to get the stats back and talk to Mike Desimo about this, because he says if they run it like 40 times for 180 yards, or maybe it's like 35 times for 180 yards, they have a ridiculous like 90 to 95% winning percentage. Whereas it doesn't matter how many yards we pass it for. We can win when we throw for 200 yards. We can win when we throw for 300 yards, or we could lose when we throw for 400 yards, although that probably hasn't happened very much. So there's no rhyme or reason to the passing yards connection to winning percentage, but they want to run the football. That's what Mark Hudspeth did. That's what Billy Napier did. And Mike Desimo knows that's what they have to do. Now, the difference between what Des has had and the two previous coaches is health, whether it be the quarterback or the offensive line. When Mark Hudspeth was the coach for for I think 6 years, he had a stretch there where the offensive line was not hurt. The same guys that started game one finished up the season. Well, then you're going to run the ball pretty well, and you're going to protect the quarterback when that's the case, right? Billy Napier comes in, and his last 3 seasons, Levi Lewis is your starting quarterback each and every ballgame. Last year, Mike Desimo started 3 different quarterbacks. The year before, all 3 quarterbacks played. So the big key this year to the Cajuns is going to be health. And if they can run that football, that's going to help out, hopefully, a lot of the team to stay healthy. And they kind of, more on a pro level than anything else, because they haven't had a huge prolific passer. It's never been that kind of team since maybe Jake Delhomme, and that's before my time in Lafayette. They're more like Troy Aikman numbers, right? We want to see with maybe a little running in there as well, right? The quarterback wants to be 16 for 21 for 185 yards and 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. That's what they want. They're not looking for what everybody else is doing, 30 for 35 for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's not Cajuns football. They want to run it down your throat. A couple years ago when they had the triple-headed monster with Eli Mitchell starring in there, I mean, they could, and a couple of offensive linemen, and they're now, Robert Hunt signed a big deal with the Panthers, right? And Kevin Dotson is another big one. They could you could yell across the line of scrimmage, running right, on 2, running right, and you couldn't stop them. It didn't matter. They had Eli Mitchell, Trey Regis, and
was it Montrell Johnson? Was that
a speedster. No, a speedster. I'll think about it. Raymond. He played for the Rams, actually, and he was the speedster. At one point in time, Levi Lewis led the nation in, handoffs for yardage, because he would come in only on a 4th possession and hand it off. And I'll think about it. There's running back Raymond. It's Raymond something. He would run for 80-yard touchdowns, and Levi would come out because it was only in there for that possession. So for the running game, it's all about that. The big question in that running game: can Zylan Perry hang on to the football? He had some fumble issues last year, a couple of them near the goal line that probably cost the Cajuns a couple of games.
Was it Raymond? Was it Callis?
Oh, Raymond Calais Jr. That's it. Yep, okay. Raymond Calais Jr. Yeah. Speedster. But that was the 3-headed monster. So that's the big deal. Maybe they have another 3-headed monster in this case.
So last year we kind of saw more of a 2-headed monster with a 60-40-ish split with Cabody and Washington. What kind of a split do you think we're going to see here? Do you think it's going to be that 3-headed monster, or
I do.
Mainly 2? Yeah.
Yeah. Bill Davis is in there, runs downhill, can catch the ball out of the backfield. We're going to stay with who's hot type of deal. But I think they're going to rotate it. Right. I'd say 3-headed monster with the other ones, but it was really 2. So we'll see if Zylan Perry is that second one. It was mostly Trey Regis and Eli Mitchell back in the day, and Calais would spell them. Bill Davis is just kind of that. I'm putting my head down and, I'm going to run over you type of deal, where the other two guys probably have more breakaway speed. Davis is a little bit of the maybe the third down back, trying to catch the ball out of the backfield type of deal. So the first two are probably more talented. Davis may be more consistent is a better way of looking at it.
Sure. So getting back to that passing game, the Ragin Cajuns lose Peter LeBlanc to graduation, but they do return a nice core from 2023 and leading returning receiver Jacob Bernard, Robert Williams, and a nice freshman tandem of Harvey Broussard and Charles Robertson. How did the wide receivers look in the spring?
Yeah, the big deal is going to be Broussard and Robert Williams. Those guys are going to be, if the Cajuns are going to hit the passing down the field, it's really Broussard and Robert Williams. I think Williams was helping out Broussard. He's a year older, but last year, like, Broussard was just kind of running and just go out there and catch the football. Now he's understanding and how to run routes. He's understanding how to get off the line. And I think Robert probably helped him with that. And I think Robert's a little bit stronger, but these guys had really good springs. The Cajuns, it's been a minute since they've had a dynamic duo, potentially at wide receiver. Again, it's still about the running game, but at the same time, Napier, it bothered the heck out of me. He would try to open up the offense trying to throw it because he knew that everybody was trying to stop the defense. Well, this is the opportunity. Maybe the Cajuns can surprise some people by trying to throw it early to loosen up the defense, because, again, they will try to stop the running attack. But it's really going to be those two guys. Broussard and Williams are the 1-2 punch for the Cajuns. And here's the thing. We'll see if they play all 4 years with the Cajuns. This may be their season to kind of take it to the next level for the Cajuns. And then they'll be on everyone's radar. We hate to talk about that, but that's what this day and age is. You all of a sudden step up and, become a 1,000-yard receiver and you score 8 to 10 touchdowns. And then, you're Power 5 bound, unfortunately.
Yeah. Louisiana took a big hit at tight end with losing Neil Johnson to graduation. He was near the top in team's targets and receptions and was the team leader in touchdown receptions with 5. If you were to describe the tight end usage for this offense to somebody who's never caught a game, how would you describe it?
Well, it's not enough. I'm a huge tight end guy. I will, my claim to fame, Napier's called me out a couple of times in press conferences. And then I called him out last year at SEC Media Days. So I always ask Mike Desimo about the tight end. I happen to think the tight end, and especially in this day and age, is the mismatch on the field, right? Too fast for the linebackers and too big for the safeties. All right. You don't have to be Gronk or Travis Kelce. You can be whatever. You could be the Neil Johnson version of that. You can be the Terrence Carter version of that. Terrence Carter, very much more of a catching tight end, which I love, but he's working on the blocking aspect of it. So, when you're doing most of the blocking, right, and you're doing more of that per se, and that's where the bread and butter is for the running game, he needs to work on that because the catching is going to be there. For the most part, they have never had. It feels to me like the Cajuns have always had that the tight end's been the afterthought with the running game and the wide receivers. It just doesn't feel like, it's a safety valve for everybody, whether it was Brady or Mahomes or Joe Montana, right? Even Jake Delhomme with Carolina and those guys over there. So that's what I would like to see, not only hitting guys downfield and opening up everything, right? Because if you have to double team a tight end, then the running game is going to open up and the underneath passing game is going to open up as well. And you get those, 6-yard crossing routes that go for either 35 yards or can go for 65 yards because the linebackers are vacating the middle of the field. So I think Terrence Carter is the guy. Everyone's been talking about him, and we'll see how he does blocking because that's how to determine how much he plays. But he's definitely the guy that they're going to look to throw the ball.
What kind of production do you think we can expect to see from him in this offense?
Well, again, it won't be enough for my liking. He's probably going to be an afterthought with the running backs and the wide receivers, I would love for him to be incredibly productive. I don't think they do that enough on the goal line. I don't think they do that enough on third down, because you can really, I mean, you go 4 or 5 wide, right? Or you go 4 wide and not split the tight end, and all of a sudden everyone goes deep, and you can just dump it off to the tight end, and you spread them out. When you're 4th and goal from the 2, and you could just lay it out there for the tight end to catch it, or the quarterback can run it in. It just seems like it's really easy, and I would hope the production would be more than anticipated. But if he gets 500 yards and 5 touchdowns in this offense, that's going to be a lot. I would like it to be more than that, but everybody knows that. So that's the way I feel. I am absolutely tight end biased.
Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Moving over to the offensive line, you mentioned earlier that's a strength of the team, and they return much of their line from 2023. They do lose left tackle Nathan Thomas to graduation, but return everyone else. So they bring back A.J. Gilly at left guard, Landon Burton at center, Jax Harrington at right guard, and George Jackson at right tackle. How did the offensive line look in the spring, and do they have someone yet that they can fill in that left tackle spot?
Well, it could be Quentin Williams or Bryant Williams. I think I'm going to go Quentin Williams on that. The big deal is Landon Burton. He's the center, and he got hurt last year, and Gilly could not snap the ball. I'm pretty sure that was against Southern Miss. They had to bring in the freshman to snap the football. They could not snap the ball. So I'm going to guess that more than one guy is going to learn how to snap the ball this year. But that offensive line is experienced. It's as good as it's been in a few years. Again, we talked about the guys who've played in the pros, and you got Max Mitchell with the Jets, in the pros. It has put in it's been a really good offensive line for the better part of a decade. And this one has a ton of experience. Burton should be healthy. I don't think it was much more than a high ankle sprain. And so he should be ready to go. It's really all going to start, right? We all talk about the quarterback, but this team is going to go as good as this offensive line is. If they can't run block or pass block, I mean, thank you, Mr. Obvious, Captain Obvious, but they should be able to do both. And I'm looking for big things. It's a ton of experience, and that's where it's going to start for the Cajuns.
All right. David, if you had to pick an offensive player to have a breakout type season in 2024, who would that be?
I'd love to say Terrence Carter. It's either going to be Harvey Broussard or Zylan Perry. Again, Zylan Perry had fumbleitis last year. That was a problem, but he's the guy. He is the one guy. He has got a little Mitchell in him, and he can make a guy miss. Got breakaway speed. He's the guy. And if the offensive line can come together and they settle on a quarterback, whoever it is, so Levi Lewis never quite got as consistently good as I would have liked him to be. But boy, in his senior year, his last year, he could throw that deep ball. He was as clutch as could be. And if they find that kind of mixture where the quarterback can hit the deep ball, Harvey Broussard is going to open up a lot of eyes. Those guys are probably the most talented guys on offense. Not necessarily the most consistent, but could be the most explosive. So Zylan Perry, if he can hang on to the football, and Harvey Broussard, it's kind of like they say, going from first game to the second game, that's your biggest improvement. They're looking for big things to improve in year number 2 for Broussard.
Let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. They have a new defensive coordinator in Jim Salgado.
Yeah.
He spent 2017 to 2022 with the Buffalo Bills as a DB coach. Last season, the college season anyway, he was at Michigan State as a cornerbacks coach. And then late November, when the Washington Commanders fired their defensive coordinator, they hired him on there with Washington. So what kind of defensive scheme do you think we'll see from the Ragin Cajuns in 2024?
Well, they were talking about, I don't think he changed it all that much. I still think it's like a basic 4-3. I guess so. Big thing was communication issues. They had all kinds of communication issues against that in that game against ODU. And it took them about 3 quarters to figure it out. Like you could see certainly in the first and the second quarters, they were looking at each other and the play was snapped. And so the wide receivers ran right past the defensive backs. I think they've they tried to have, the same guy on the boundary as on the field. So now they're running back and forth depending where the ball is placed. I think that has switched, right? We're going to keep one guy on the field or basically either we're going to keep one guy on the same side of the field or we're going to follow the wide receivers, which is probably easier, right? Forget about boundary and field guys. And the guys up front said, when we heard them in the spring, they're going to be unleashed. They are going to come after the quarterback. And I would much rather do that. I think last year and the last couple of years, the Cajuns were trying to keep teams in front of them and try to march down the field 10, 12 plays, which is not the easiest thing to do, right? There could be a penalty, could be a sack. It's tough to, in college, get those 10 to 12 plays numerous times and, win football games. But the Cajuns defense had issues last year, and they're going to try and be much more aggressive trying to get to the quarterback. That's what I prefer. I prefer being more aggressive. If you make a play and throw it over my head, good for you. We'll see if you can do that again as I come after your quarterback and try to get him on the ground.
Well, let's talk about those guys who are going to get up or unleashed here up front. They brought back a lot of experience in 2024. However, they did lose Sonny Hazard to graduation and Nigel McGriff to the portal. But with guys like Jordan Lawson and Mason Narcisse and Antoine Bayless, among others, returning, this line looks to be in really good shape. How did they look in the spring, and did anyone stand out to you?
I'm not sure if anyone stood out in the spring, but Antoine Bayless and Cam Whitfield are going to be the guys coming after the quarterback. Casey Osai is in the middle. They did lose Gant to Houston. He went to Houston before Zion Chris joined him, so that's a loss for sure. But it's going to be the guys on the edge, Bayless and Whitfield, who have the big numbers. They could be hand in the ground, hand not in the ground, two hands on the ground, whatever you want to be. Those are the guys that are coming from the edge and that are expected to put pressure on the quarterback. Always the issue with that I've seen recently is that sometimes these guys come too hard, too fast, and the quarterbacks get away. And you got to be able to, when you, that's the key. Kind of like, when sometimes you got to catch the ball when you're going to get hit. When you have a shot at the quarterback, you got to get him. I understand they're trying to, but you can't overrun the play when you have an opportunity to drop the quarterback. There is games are won or lost, whether if on 2nd and 8, you could make it 3rd and 15, or now it's 1st and 10 with a 20-yard play because you didn't wrap up the quarterback. That's what they have to get better at. And that was a little bit of an issue for them last year.
So the linebackers lose their second leading tackler from 2023 in Jasper Williams, and then Kendra Gant transfers to Houston. However, they bring back their leading tackler from a year ago and Casey Osai, along with Cam Whitfield and Khalif Edwards. How did the linebackers look in the spring?
Yeah, I think they're going to be okay. I think with Osai and Whitfield, big time leaders, tons of experience. I think linebacking, and that's where the communication is going to come from, right? Those are the guys that are going to be yelling out the plays. Casey Osai mostly. That's where it's going to be. And can they step up and fill those holes that those two guys, are making in the middle and make those tackles, for 2-yard gains or 3-yard gains instead of 5 or 6 yard gains?
Who do you think will step into that Jasper Williams role and join KC there in the middle linebackers?
Well, you got Caleb Williams, and then again they're looking at again how they're playing it. Right now, they got. Depending on where Amir McDaniel's playing, the star that's on the back end, it looks like they may play that 4. I guess I said 4-3, maybe 4-2-5. So they only have two guys in the middle right now. We'll see if that's the case. To me, that's still trying to get people not to go over your head instead of coming after them. So we'll see if that works out. But I with the guys that they have in the middle now, I think they're in good shape.
The defensive backfield looks poised to be a strength of this team in 2024. They lost Patrick Mensah and Glenn Brown to graduation, but this what's not to love with guys like Latrone Lewis Jr., Tyree Skipper, Keon Martin, Courtline Flowers, Caleb Anderson, and others returning. How did the room look in the spring?
Yeah, I mean, these guys have a ton of experience, right? Courtland Flowers, redshirt junior. Tyrone Lewis, redshirt senior. Keon Martin, a senior. And as we mentioned for the star, Amir McDaniel, redshirt senior. So these guys are all, big time experienced guys. The one guy that Desmo kept on pointing out to us in spring was Courtland Flowers. Whatever he's done in the spring, he was showing out playing football. And that may be one of those guys that maybe they put him at corner and now they put him back at safety, or maybe it's the other way around. Whatever he was doing in the spring really showed out. And that when you get that from experienced guy, usually it's, Harvey Broussard or Robert Williams or Zylan Perry, the guys who were there for the first year who kind of catch your eye. Boy, he came in shape, right? He put on 10 pounds. They could not stop yapping about Courtland Flowers. So we'll see. Also, if you want to have somebody on during the season, Keon Martin is trying to do podcasting. So
awesome.
He's got some broadcasting chops with him.
All right. If you had to pick a defensive player to have a breakout type season here in 2024, who would that be?
It's probably going to be Whitfield or Bayless. Those guys getting after the quarterback. That's, again, if the Cajuns are going to do what the Cajuns want to do, it's going to be those guys up front that are going to dictate it. If we're seeing a lot of tackles by the Courtland Flowers or the Keon Martins deal, right? I may not know a lot of football, but when your corners and safeties, maybe the safeties leading you in tackles, that's a problem. And so we'll see how those guys do, allowing the middle guys to make the tackles. And can you have a 1-2 punch? I mean, can Bayless and Whitfield, do they get double-digit sacks? Do they each get double-digit sacks? The hurries, it's right there for them. And how long does it take to adjust to the new defense? They got a sneaky. They start off with Grambling at home. They got a sneaky road game against Kennesaw, and then the schedule gets tough. They get John Summerall coming in with Tulane, and then they're going to Wake, and so it's not the easiest of all schedules to begin with. And so we'll see how long it takes for the defense to get going, and maybe it's a good thing they get to go on the road again. We could compare it how it looked like against ODU. ODU ends up being better than maybe most people thought, but I think Cajuns fans thought, and maybe this one thought, they were going to win that ball game. How they communicate on the road and making sure they're getting the play in before the ball is snapped. Again, don't know much about football, but I would think that would be a key that the football players are not yapping to each other, but looking at the player across the line.
With spring practice now over, which position or position groups do you feel is the most concerning?
That's a good question. Again, so I'm going to turn that around. This is going to be one of the most okay. Actually, it's really easy. The most concerning one is the quarterback. That's it. That I was going to overthink that. They have a ton of experience. They haven't been able to stay healthy. All right. At all. They had an electric Zion Chris. He went to Houston, got some money. Congratulations. Ben hasn't been able to stay healthy for a couple of seasons. And I think Chandler's a good backup. I'm not sure if he is a Division I starting quarterback. Again, he doesn't have a low floor. He just doesn't have a high ceiling. And can he stay healthy, right? He missed spring practice. This is not really an injury, but he missed spring ball 2 years ago because he had an appendectomy. All right. And I'm actually impressed that I said that correctly. I'm not going to say it again. And so the quarterback room, to me, the quarterback room is the biggest question mark because they're solid up front, really good running backs, pretty good wide receivers. The defensive line is good. The linebacking is good. The defensive backs are all experienced. It's the quarterback. And can they find somebody, down 4, 2.5 minutes to go? Can you get me a touchdown? Right? Down 3, minute and a half to go. Can we get in the field goal range? It's that kind of guy. And can they do that? Right? They had some games last year. They lost at home. They lost at home to Southern Miss, which wasn't really good. They lost at home, to Georgia State. Georgia State didn't win another game until like the bowl game, I think. They can't lose to lesser teams, with all due respect to those squads, right? Losing on the road to Coastal, okay, it is what it is. Losing on the road to App, if you play them, got it. You can't lose to lesser teams at home. And if the Cajuns are going to have their kind of season, they need to take care of the home schedule and beat the teams they should beat. And hopefully you beat a couple of teams that maybe you shouldn't beat.
So Justice and I were talking about the other day. We're not sure when this portal closes and when it opens, because it seems like people are still jumping in the portal, and I thought that closed a while ago. I don't really know the rules anymore. Is there anything in particular the coaches might be looking to add to the team from the transfer portal?
Well, I don't know if you can jump into the portal. You can certainly jump out at any time. And then the only deadline is enrolling into college, right? That's whatever deadline that is. And I bet you that's not until the end of August. I mean, there's still some way before the portal started. The coaches would wait until school started before telling who was the starting quarterback, or else they would just transfer. So coaches were playing games with this way before any of this portal or NIL stuff started. The Cajuns, despite hurt with Gant and Chris, they did not have a lot of guys. They got Fitzgerald West, local kid, went to LSU, going to be in the middle. He's really, I think, the only one that may be in the 2 deep that is expected outside of the punter. They got 2 punters that transferred in. They needed a punter, and that was about it. They didn't lose a lot, and they didn't need a lot. And I think the guys that they lost outside of those 2 guys that I mentioned, were depth guys, young guys that were looking for a chance to play, and it wasn't their turn yet. Outside of the 2 guys we mentioned, again, I'm not sure how many guys went out and got NIL deals. There's not a whole lot of need there. When you find out in spring ball, we need a punter, which is what Desimo said. And we kind of had fun with that with him this spring. So they got a defensive tackle, and they're doing a good job recruiting. They got a couple of local kids that just signed, verbally committed. We'll see how long that lasts. These kids, you can expect a 17-year-old to stay committed for like 6 months when they, these people. I don't know about you, but I changed my mind. I do it. I still do it at 55. I change my mind every week. 17-year-olds are going to change their mind every 2 weeks. So we'll see how that goes. But there's not a lot of need. They didn't lose a lot, and they didn't need a lot, and they got what they needed.
So you've talked a couple times tonight about, the different strengths that the Ragin Cajuns have, but what would you say is the main strength of this team?
The main strength of the team. Well, if the team is going to win, it's going to be that running game. That's where the strength is going to be. Des has stressed it. If this team is going to be good or really good, it's going to be because of the running game. Zylan Perry figured out how to hang on to the football. The offensive line stayed healthy. The quarterback, they absolutely want the quarterback to complement the running game, not the other way around. And so the running game is absolutely going to be the strength of this team. But we'll see if everything goes the way that it should, right? Can a Broussard or a Williams, make some eye-popping catches to keep some of that defense honest going up against the Cajuns' rushing attack.
When it comes to recruitment of new players and the retention of existing player, how has NIL impacted Louisiana? I would normally say transfer portal, but you kind of spoke to it earlier. It didn't really, have a big impact there. So how has NIL impacted Louisiana?
Well, I think Gant and Chris got a little something. All right. I'm not sure Chris got as much as he was hoping for, but okay. He's not the only one. They are working on it. All right. And, by the time they were working on it, the rules have changed. All right. So they have an NIL collective that they are trying to, give to football players, basketball players, baseball players, softball players. They're doing what they can. It's going to be an issue. Obviously, and now the schools, right? Those Power 5 schools are going to have $20 million that they can spend on players. All right, we'll see where that comes from, but Cajuns don't have that, and I don't know if anybody else in the group of 5 has that. And again, to me, there's only so much money, right? And so many positions. We saw how much money allegedly those players from A&M got, and I don't think anyone has left. They're gone. And it's only been a couple of years since Nick Saban accused Jimbo Fisher of buying his recruiting class. And all those guys are gone because you can only have so many 5-star defensive tackles. They all want to play. And so I do think in this case, there will be that trickle-down effect. You could end up with, a situation like Troy Amos, local kid, went to, was going to be Mr. Everything, and then went to Alabama and then sat on the bench. Didn't play. Now I think he's at Ole Miss. All right. And so these guys have to be careful when money is dangled in front of them, that they get it and it's promised. Are you being used as a depth player? Desimo was very forward at this. I asked him about it and he went off on it, which is Mike knows what he's doing when it comes to this. So, I'm holding my phone and he knows exactly what's going to happen. He's, in spring, he's like, we battled it every day. The players come to him and they tell him what's going on. And he goes, look, guys, I would tell you to go if I think the money is real and the opportunity to play is real, but this is what they're going to have you do. Talk to the guys that just left. Amos sat on the bench and didn't get nearly as much as he said he was, right? And so it's how they're handling this, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out, not to go off on a complete tangent, I'm still trying to figure out why Jerry Glasgow, with a loaded softball team in 2025, ended up going to Texas Tech. All that NIL and portal deal may be big, but it's certainly not going to be big in 2025, not for Texas Tech. Anyways, although they may be taking, at least a half a dozen girls from the Cajun softball team, but certainly in 27 and 28 down the road, it may be, but I don't know why he took that job. Something's not quite kosher. We'll have to see about that. But from what I'm told, it's all about NIL. Yeah, but that's not going to be, it's going to take you a couple of years to get that. And by the way, he's not rebuilding Texas Tech. He's building it. That may be the worst Power 5 softball program in America after looking what I saw or seeing what I saw. But anyways, I went off a little bit there. The Cajuns are going to be in the same spot as everybody else is, right? Well, can JMU step up? Can App State step up? Right? A lot of these schools have deficits in their programs, and how much can they cut? They're understaffed as it is, right? They have like 4 SIDs, right? That's it, covering all the sports. Go look what a Power 5 school has. They have like 7 or 8 SIDs covering all the sports, and so they're to the bones, bare bones as it is as an operation. We'll see what happens with NIL. It's tough. You try to take care of the guys, like we mentioned. If Broussard and Williams pop, can you get them a solid 5-figure check, right? No one is writing in $1 million check for the Cajuns. I don't even think they'll even write like $150,000 check, but we can, here's 10, here's 15, here's 25. I mean, that's going to have to happen, right? Whether they want to believe it or not, if you want to have anything, you got to be able to come up with a little bit of money to take care of some players. And so it's affected them a little bit, but not nearly as much as I thought it was going to this offseason, because they just didn't lose that much. They lost a couple key players, and we mentioned them, but not nearly as much as some other teams did.
So you mentioned a little bit about being understaffed, and it seems more and more that the demands of a head coach is really turning into more of a general manager type role between recruiting, player retention, fundraising, etc. And they may be less involved with the X's and O's side of things because of that. Do you see that happening there at Louisiana?
It absolutely is that. We got guys doing things, that they haven't done before. Absolutely. They just want to coach. They just want to coach football, but now they have to recruit their own players, right? And somehow you have to tell the players that are there that they're going to play, and somehow you got to recruit the new players that are coming in. It is a whole thing. I do think somewhere along the way there will be some parameters. Also, not to go off on a tangent, but I think the Campbell baseball coach just left, and the whole entire Campbell team just went into the portal. All right, well, so for the first time in sports, right, the head coach leaves, and now the kids are not bound because the head coach left them behind, which I don't have a problem with. But somewhere along the way, there's got to be some sort of parameters to where, the players can leave when the coach leaves, and how many times you can do it, right? We can't have. I don't think it's in anyone's best interest. I really don't, coach or not coach. If you end up with 4 or 5 schools over 6 years, right? That's not going to happen. We're going to get rid of this. This COVID year is going to get out of there. But somewhere along the way, there's going to be the parameters. You get one free move. All right. Exception is if your coach leaves, then you get another move. But if you want to transfer after that, then you got to wait a year, which it used to be that way. And then I know, it used to be if you transferred within the conference, you had to wait 2 years. So that was prohibitive. You couldn't do that at all, or no one would anyways, for the most part. And so I think there'll be parameters somewhere with that. I don't think it takes a super genius to figure some of that out. You're going to have to collectively bargain it, and that's how it's going to get done. And then how do these contract works, right? If your player signs a contract, is he an employee? How does all of that work? So that's way above my pay grade. But I think I think that's coming sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think that we'll find out a little bit more when the House versus NCAA court case gets all figured out. But,
Yep.
Yeah. So, David, what does success look like for the Ragin Cajuns in 2024?
They got to contend for the Sun Belt West division title. The one thing that they have, they don't lose to Texas State. Doesn't matter. Texas State, to be honest with you, that was one of the games that the Cajuns probably should have lost. I love me some G.J. Kinney, but he probably should have kicked a field goal, although I'm much more of a go for the touchdown deal, but he probably should have kicked a field goal late in the first half. And TJ Finley just couldn't put him away. And then he couldn't lead him down to a score. But Texas State, I think is the prohibitive favorite in the West. I would like to think 8-4 is a really good season. Their win total is 8.5. I think that's right on it. They do have some tough games, Tulane's a tough game at home. They got to go to Wake. We'll see what they're like. They've lost to Southern Miss the last 2 seasons. They get App State at home, but then they got to go to Coastal. Then they got to go to San Marcos. They do get Arkansas State at home. We'll see how Jalen Rayner and Butch Jones are doing there. And they get South Alabama at home and Troy at home before they finish up on the road to ULM. So if this team can be 8 or 9 wins and compete for a Sun Belt West title, I would consider that a successful year. In fact, I would say anything less than that's going to be disappointing. If it doesn't come with injuries, I'm a big reasons versus excuses, guys. A lot of times you always hear that from the coaches. It's not an excuse. Well, if you're playing with your third string tackle, that's a reason. There was a reason he was the third string tackle and not the second string tackle and not the first string tackle. So if the quarterback is able to get, or the rushers are able to get past him, that's not an excuse. That's a reason. So if there are reasons for it being a disappointing season, that's different. But it's cold out. No, that's an excuse. It's wet out. No, that's maybe a little bit of a reason, but that's an excuse too, because the other team's playing in the same conditions. But if this team is healthy and playing to their capability, for the most part, they will contend in the West. I think that has to do with them. And I also think it has to do with a lot of upheaval. And, we got the 2-time defending champion, Troy. Gunnar Watson is, his 18-year excursion at Troy he's out of eligibility. Kamani Vidal is gone. We wish the best for Chris Lewis, explosive wide receiver, recuperating from cancer. Jared Parker's a new coach, comes in from Notre Dame. No head coaching experience. We got Major Applewhite, head coaching experience, new quarterback, and Gio Lopez. Had a really good game in the bowl game, did not complete a pass in the spring game. So we'll see. Bryant Vincent, I think, is overturning 3/4 of his roster with ULM. We have no idea what's going on there. So there is some turnover in the West. You got Texas State. You got the Cajuns, and then I mentioned Jalen Raynor in Arkansas State, a true freshman last year, who had the Red Wolves in a bowl game, lost on a controversial onside kick. But if he can become more consistent, started out pretty good. I think he's 17 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, like almost 60% completion percentage, which is pretty good for a freshman, true freshman. If he can take that next step, Arkansas State may be the biggest surprise in the Sun Belt. They may be the biggest surprise in the Sun Belt. But back to the question, competing for a Sun Belt West championship and contending with Texas State is what is expected. And anything less than that would be disappointing if you're the Cajuns.
All right, we've covered a lot today about this Cajuns football team. But is there anything else you want to share or think that we should know about this 2024 Louisiana Ragin Cajuns?
Well, I think the same thing. I think Mike Desimo said it. We may have mentioned it here. Will Hall says it. Like, these guys are looking for extensions, right? They have not got extended yet, right? This is Desimo's 3rd year. I said he coached in 3 bowl games because, Billy Napier left after the Sun Belt Championship game. Will Hall is actually entering his 4th year. So, these guys they got to win, right? And they got to contend. And again, it hasn't been awful so far for Desimo, but he is 6-7 in those 2 seasons. And those are 2 bowl losses, right? I don't think there's a huge difference between 7-6 and 6-7. I don't think one, you're recruiting better than the other, but you want to say you won a bowl game and you had a winning season. Great. I don't think it's like one was 10-2 and one was, 3-9 or anything like that. But he's got a team. He really does. If that quarterback can play slightly above average, this team's going to be pretty good, and it needs to stay healthy. It just hasn't been healthy. See, that is more of a reason than excuse. It just hasn't been healthy the last couple of years over Desimo, whether it's the center or the quarterback. If they can get slightly above average play from the quarterback and the team stays healthy, they'll be right there. And again, they don't, for whatever reason, they do not lose to Texas State. Texas State will probably be favored in this season. But that's what I'm looking for. And Desimo knows he's got to win because he knows, they're opening up a new stadium. They're redoing Cajun Field. That'll be done for the 2025 season. So, and that's where, I think the talent is going to turn over for that season. So they need something to hold them over for a couple of years because the talent is there this season.
Well, David, thank you again for sharing your time and knowledge with us today.
Luke, Justice, appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on. This was fun.
Yep,
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening in podcast form, please rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support. And until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.
Fight on, Cajuns, fight on to victory for the red and white. We will sing a triumphant glory for our team tonight. You will hear the razor of the Cajuns, so let's give a yell. Hey! Hustle up and bustle up and fight on victory. Go! UL!